Hi, you're watching the IT Taster channel. This video is really a follow-on to my last video where we installed Windows Server 2019 for the very first time. And if you watch the video, you'll remember we installed the operating system, we looked at partitioning and also a few other considerations along the way. This video is really the next step where we're going to perform some initial configuration. We're going to do things like assign our server an IP address, give it a host name, and some other important things along the way. But before we do that, we'll just take a quick look at the lab setup that I'm using. So here is my server, and at the moment it is a standalone server. That is a computer with Windows Server 2019 installed, and that's it. It's not a member of a domain, it's not a domain controller, it is a standalone server. Now I do need to give my server a host name. That's an important thing that I'm going to do, and I've chosen the host name of server 1. And I'm going to be working with IP version 4 in this video. And this is the IP addressing scheme that I plan to use. Now don't worry if you're not too familiar with IP addressing. I do have a series of IP version 4 addressing videos on the IT Taster channel for you to take a look at if you want to. They take you from a beginner, so if you've never worked with IP version 4 before, they'll take you right from the beginner stage all the way up to doing things like subnetting and that kind of thing. And I'll pop the links below so that you can watch those at your leisure. Now this IP addressing scheme really is my home lab setup, and it's based around using my small network at home and my router. So I'm going to be working with a Class C IP address of 192.168.1.101 for my server, a default Class C subnet mask of 255.255.255.0. My gateway, of course, is my router, which is 192.168.1.254, and that's also going to be initially serving DNS, but that will change a little later on. So you may need to make some adjustments for your home lab setup, but this will give you some idea of what I'm working with and where we're going. So with that said, let's go to the server and start configuring it. First thing I'm going to do is to log on to the server. Now when we log on to a server, Server Manager is set to start automatically by default. And we also get a reminder pop up to tell us about Windows Admin Center and give us the opportunity to try that. But I'm going to close this for now because I'm going to do all my configuration from within Server Manager. Now we also have our Welcome to Server Manager tile as well, which explains what that does. And I'm going to hide this for now. Now to begin configuring the server, I'm going to click Local Server. And the first thing I'm going to check is my time zone. And to do that, just click onto the time zone. Make sure it's set to the correct time zone, which it is in my case. And you also have the opportunity to make sure the date and time are correct. Again, this is really important because time plays a very important role in security and in Kerberos. And if you have time issues, it can cause you problems later on. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to take a look at is Windows Update. Now, within Server 2016 and Server 2019, we don't have the option to configure Windows updates in quite the same way. So what we can see here is that updates are configured to install automatically. And I don't have an option to change that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click Start, right-click Start and click Run. And there's a little utility that you can use called sconfig. And incidentally, this is really useful if you're working with Server Core where you don't have a GUI, because it allows you to configure all sorts of things from the IP address to the host name. But the bit I'm interested in is option number 5 that we can see on the menu here, Windows Update Settings. So I'm going to choose number 5. And I'm going to choose manual updates because I want control over my Windows updates in the lab environment, and hit return. And we just have to wait a couple of seconds and then click OK. And then the last thing to do is exit sconfig by typing option 15 to exit the command line and hitting return. Okay, the next thing I want to do is give the server an IP address, because as we can see at the moment, our server is configured to obtain an IP address from DHCP, and we don't want that. We want a fixed IP address for our server. So to do that, just click the link, right click our Ethernet adapter, choose properties, and double click IP version 4. And I'm going to click use the following IP address. And I'm going to input the settings that we looked at in the previous slide. So I'm going to set my server with the IP address of 192.168.1.101. And when we hit the tab key, we'll notice that it's automatically calculated the default class C subnet mask and put that in there automatically for me. So next thing I need to do is enter the IP address of my router, which is 192.168.1.254. And my router also provides DNS resolution. So for the time being, I'm going to use my router for DNS resolution. So I'm just going to enter the IP address of the router and click OK. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to look at is the server's host name. Now what happens when you install Windows Server, it chooses a default host name which isn't very user friendly. As you can see, it's win, dash and a load of letters and numbers, and that's really difficult to work with when you're doing things like sharing resources and that kind of thing. So again, click that link and I'm going to give my server a proper host name. Click change. And I'm going to call my server server1 and click OK. Now we are told that the server will need to restart to apply these changes. Before I do that, it is worth me pointing out that it is so important to set your IP address and your server host name at this stage before you start installing roles and things like Active Directory. Because if you try to change these kind of things later on down the line, you are likely to encounter all sorts of problems, and this is why it's so important. They may seem like small things, but it's really important to get this set up right here. So I'm going to click OK, click close, and I'm going to reboot the server. Okay, I've logged back into the server and I'm back in Server Manager. And you'll notice our server now has a host name of server1, and it also has an IP address of 192.168.1.101. And I'm just going to check networking by dropping to a command prompt. And I'm just going to ping my router to make sure that works. There we are, we're getting our ping responses, so all is well. Now the last thing really to do before we carry on with the evaluation in our lab is to go to Windows Update and install our Windows Update. So I'm going to click check for updates and allow the server to install the necessary updates. This is going to take a while, so we'll leave the video there, but it is really important to make sure you do install the updates so that while you're carrying out your testing and evaluation, you don't run into any problems or bugs that are fixed with a simple patch. Well, that brings us to the end of the video. I hope you found it helpful. Now, you may think that some of this is fairly basic setup, but it is important to get it right at this stage because this video is intended really just to set the foundations for upcoming labs and upcoming videos where we'll move on to install roles and features and do all sorts of cool things with Windows Server. So don't forget to hit like if you like the video and also hit subscribe. Your comments are welcome, and as always, thanks for watching.